I stay here or more on the front? Then I'm blocking you guys. Okay, so we have the system installed, piping and tanks and all the other requirements, but now what with it? Well, we have to make sure that it's working, right? Otherwise, there's no. What would be the benefit of having a system that they say is good if we don't know if it's working? So the first test that we're going to be talking about is the UST monitoring system certification. This one has to be conducted by a certified technician. They have to be licensed also by the state as a tank tester, and they have to meet they have to be ICC certified. Depending on the systems that they're going to be certifying, they will need also certifications from the manufacturers of the tanks or the piping or any equipment that they're going to be using. The system has to be maintained in accordance with manufacturer's instructions. So during the test, and I think we've mentioned this before, if we see a sensor that, let's say a dual float annular sensor, we know that the dual float is going to give us a low liquid and a high liquid. Once we are there and that sensor is being tested and it doesn't provide an alarm for low liquid, let's say, only high liquid, that's not working according to the manufacturer's instructions, right? It's actually working as a single float. So we would make them either repair that sensor or get another one. And it would be up to them, either go for a single float or just replace it with another dual float. So every component in the system has to be working according to the way it was programmed to. Now all the system has to be tested every 12 months. And now when we say the system, we are talking about the system that actually detects any leak, okay? For example, right now, the spill buckets are not part of the UST monitoring system certification. The spill buckets also have to be tested every 12 months, but they do not have to be done during the annual certification. Now, most facilities do have the entire site tested at the same time just to have the same date for all the components, but it's up to them. We also have some sites that they just want us to do the testing of the sensors, just the leak detection equipment, and then they would do the spill buckets at another date later. Now, per the state, they can do this test whenever they want, once a year, and we do not have to be there. But we in San Diego County, we actually like to be there we don't want them to shut the station twice or their site twice. And as he was saying before, we don't want to get dirty. Just kidding. No, it's easier if we all work together. If we find any issues or any problems, we would have the technician there already, and they can fix it right away, maybe, something that we cannot do. And before any testing, they have to give a 48-hour notification, which in our case, they give us even more because they actually have to schedule the inspection with us, right? Sometimes even like a month before the actual test. Now, once the test is completed, they have to give us a result, the report. The UST owner or operator is the one who has to give us the report. Most of the time, it's the contractor who gives us that document. Now, what if we're expecting everything to get passing results? If anything fails, they have 30 days to fix it. Now, it will depend upon the violation, the component that is not working, or up to the inspector if that component should be fixed in a more stringent time, let's say 7 days. For example, a line leak detector, it would be depending also on if it's a single wall system, it's a double wall system, am I putting in danger something, the environment, but officially it's 30 days. What we like to tell them is just repair it immediately, and you have 30 days to give me evidence that you repair it. That way we're not telling them you have 29 days to be out of compliance and then just show me compliance at the 30th day. Okay, he's asking if repairing any component is going to take longer than 30 days, what do we do? You are the UST owner. You are the contractor. Coupa, who are you? Owner. We want to know that you are actually doing something, that you care about what we are telling you to do, and that you want to be in compliance. So if you call me in 2 weeks and you tell me, hey, I have this part in order and it's going to take 3 weeks to get to this side, and then I have to schedule. As long as I know what's going on and I know that you're really taking care of, that's fine with me. And I think that's fine with us all in San Diego. I don't know, other Coupas are more stringent maybe? Have you heard anything else? Generally that's the case. Yeah, so as long as you show that you are actually doing something and that you really want to fix it, just don't take 3 months to get a part that we know is here in the state or something. Any other question? So this is, again, the picture showing the 4 inspectors. That was just a joke, okay? That's we always are by ourselves. During that picture, it was 1 inspector, and he had 3 trainees with him, new hires. 4 tires, yeah. So that's just to show how they open all the sumps and how they put the caution tape and orange cones. We do also wear the safety equipment, safety vests, steel-toed boots. Okay, so that's it for monitoring system certification. Then the next testing is secondary containment test. Did I skip one? No. Okay, secondary containment test. Secondary containment. So this test is done at every secondary containment area, either double wall tank or double wall piping, or under dispenser containment, or sumps. Good? Secondary containment systems have not always been here. They were installed for new systems starting on January 1st, 2001. And then that was the first test, and then they had to be retested using the same method 6 months later, and then 36 months thereafter. Now, for all systems that were already installed prior to January 1st, 2001, they had to be tested by January 1st, 2003, and then 36 months thereafter. So by now, every site should be at every 3 years, unless they install any new components, like new repipe or new dispensers, UDCs, I should say. Okay, what it's required to be tested, as I said before, any double wall containment, being this the UST or the piping or the sumps or under dispenser. Now, in the case of BPH sites, for example, because they're being continuously monitored, they don't have to do the secondary containment test. They are exempt from this. And let's say it's not a BPH site or a BPH system, but they have hydrostatic annular space on the tanks. That annular space is not required to be tested either. But the piping and the sumps and the UDCs, those have to be tested. Okay, and then can anyone test that? No, it has to be a certified person also, and they have to follow the manufacturer's guidelines or standards. And if there's no manufacturer guidelines, they have to rely on the industry code or engineering standards. And if not, then they have to get a method approved by a California registered professional engineer. Now, in San Diego County, we actually ask every contractor to provide us a protocol, and that would list all the equipment that they're going to be using for their testing. And they're going to tell us also how they're going to do the test, when they're going to give us the report, and what they're going to be doing if anything fails. Once we review that report, that protocol, we approve that contractor to do testing in San Diego County. If we see, for this test, they also have to give us a notification 48 hours in advance. If we see a contractor that we're not familiar with, we will go and check our records to see if we have any protocol from that contractor. If we don't, then we do not allow that contractor to do tests until they send us the protocol and we review it. They should also include copies of their certifications for each unit that they're going to be using. Do you guys all do the same? No? Yeah? Only yes? Okay. We rock. Okay, this is a photo of during installation. It's just showing the sumps, turbine sumps on the right, fill sumps. This is just the ATG sump. Just to show you how this will be a secondary containment. This is what actually had to be tested every 3 years. Now at this point, at the very beginning, it could be a hydrostatic visual test. But then at the 3 year later, it would have to be with instruments because we wouldn't be able to see around the whole sump from outside. This is the lake test. This is the visual hydrostatic test. And when they actually, when they put the water in the secondary containment, most of the time they like to spray paint the top surface of the water level so they can actually see if there's any drop against the wall. That helps, although we are also going to be able to see if there's any leak from the outside. And this is the one using equipment or accelerated precision test. In this case, we're using an MTS system. The picture on the left is just showing this is a turbine sump with a water level has to be 2 inches above the highest product penetration. And the flow, just make sure that you have the probe of the float, and then the float, just make sure that the float is not at the very, very bottom when they're testing, because it has to be able to freely move either up or down, okay? And then the picture on the right is just a close-up of the same sensor. Secondary containment test also includes under dispenser containments. In this case, this was a new installation. You can see that by seeing this concrete. It's like a new pad here. And in this specific one, they were doing the 6 months after installation test. And this is an Incon equipment, which works also the same way as the previous one I showed you in the picture. This photo is here again just to show you how they would be testing the secondary piping. They would need to put this boot here and close it. And this is where they would actually hook in their instruments to do the pressure test. And going back to the question early, we want to see these boots pull back in sumps, not in dispensers though, but we do check for this area to be pointing downward. And I'm gonna go back to your topic before. For fiberglass, usually most of the time we see the piping going from dispensary to the tank. So if there's any leak going from the primary line to the secondary line, that leak should be going straight to the sump, right? So there's a sensor in the sump, and that's what's gonna tell us, hey, there's a leak. That's why we do not require the boots to be pulled back in the UDCs. Because the sensor in the UDC, yes, that's in San Diego. The sensor in the UDC, the idea of having that one there is just to monitor the line, the single line that it's in the dispenser. Remember the one where the double wall piping ends towards the shear bulb, just for that section. Now with the flex lines, they just go around from one dispenser to the next dispenser, and then they come back to the tank. That's why we want those to be open at each dispenser. Because let's say there's a leak at the first dispenser, we don't want to see that leak until it has passed through all those dispensers and it has reached the tank. So we want that leak to be detected at the earliest point, which would be the next dispenser. Got it? Did I just confuse you more? Okay, so, and I said this before, BPA sites do not have to do the secondary containment test. They're exempt. I'm glad for them. That BPA sites are hard to maintain. Okay, so because secondary containment test hasn't been here since ever. They had to implement it at a certain date. So they had the option, all UST owners and UST operators have the option to replace the secondary containment system by December 31st, 2002 with a system that could be tested, or they had the option to submit a program of enhanced leak detection to us, and I'm gonna be talking about ELD in the next slides, by July 1st, 2002. Now they had submitted that program for ELD. They would have to complete that program actually on December 31st, 2002. And anyways, at the end, they were required to do secondary containment test by July 1st, 2005, or to have the system capable of being tested. So by now, all systems should be, except BPH, should be able to be tested for secondary containment test. And this is a photo showing what a system, this was a system that couldn't be tested back then. These were actually the sumps, what they called the sumps for the turbines. There was no way those were going to be able to be tested. That system is not there anymore. Any question with secondary containment test? No. Okay, if there's any failure in secondary containment, during secondary containment test, if, let's say, if it's a test boot that it's ripped off, they can just replace it. They don't need a permit. If, what would it be one that requires a permit? If there's something else, like the piping maybe it's bad, one portion of the piping, they would need a plancheck permit through us. They would need to pay for the permit, and then they would require inspection from our part. But if it's something that doesn't require a permit, they should be able to fix it within 30 days also, or 60 days. Is it 60? We give them 30 in the county of San Diego, okay. If they need a repair, they need to put in that repair, the application within 30 days, and then actually fix it within 60. So we give them 90 days to complete the whole thing, including the retest. And we also need the report. They need to keep a copy on site. Okay, the enhanced leak detection test. What is it? This is a method that determines the integrity of a UST system by introduction of an external detection of a substance that is not stored in the tank. This test has to be done by a third-party certified contractor, and there's actually only 3 here in California. Well, there's 3 approved in California. Well, 2 of them are in Arizona, and 1 is here in California. And this test is capable of detecting a leak rate of 0.005 gallons per hour with a minimum probability detection of 95% and a probability of fail results of 5%. But let me tell you how this is done. Okay, when they do an enhanced leak detection test, they actually have to drill some borings like this. And for that, they also need a permit, not with us, with the CUPA, but with Land and Water Quality Division or site assessment, depending on who handles those issues at your jurisdiction. So the contractor, the company that gets hired to do the ELD test, they would need to install these probes. Then they inoculate the substance that has to be different from whatever they're storing in those tanks. They call it tracer or chemical marker, and it's a trade secret, so we don't know what's in there. Then they just let it there, sit there, and mix up with the actual substance that it's being stored in the tank. Then they go back and actually take a sample or a reading to see if anything that of the tracer or chemical marker that they put in got leaked or released into the environment. And it actually detects liquid or vapor. Okay, who has to do the ELD test? The UST monitoring system certification is for everybody. The secondary containment test is for everybody except BPH sites. ELD test is only for systems that are located within 1,000 feet of a public water system. Do we all know what a public water system is? Yeah, no. Okay, it's a water system that provides uh, water for public consumption that has 25 connections or more, or less, but 15 connections or less, but it serves 25 people or more within 60 days in a year. Confusing? Okay, so all single wall tanks that are located within 1,000 feet of a public water system, they are required to do the ELD test every 3 years. ELD tests, are those done only in the tanks or also in the piping? It could be either or. Okay, so the single wall systems, they don't just do the ELD test, they have to submit a plan to us. It's called Program of ELD. They actually have to, okay, wait. It wasn't just the owner that said, I need that test. The state sent them a letter saying, okay, we have records that your system is located within 1,000 feet of a drinking water system. So the UST owner had to modify the monitoring plan and mark that section that said, this facility or this system is required to do the ELD test. Then they had to make a program, okay, I'm gonna have this contractor coming every 3 years and he's gonna be doing my test. And that would have to be signed, that plan had to be signed by the contractor and by the UST owner. And then we also have to get a copy of that plan. And they actually have to follow that plan. Now that's for single wall tanks. For double wall systems that are also located within 1,000 feet of a public drinking water well, they only had to do it one time. And they also received a letter from the state. They did not need to modify their monitoring plan because it's not something that they have to do every 3 years. So they only do it one time, and if it's good, they're done. If it fails, they would have to find the problem, fix it, and retest again. And there's also for tanks being installed after July 1st, 2003, they also have to do an ELD test at the beginning, at the installation, and that's it. And this is an exemption again for emergency generator systems. If instead of doing the secondary containment test, they can do an ELD test. This only applies to emergency generators. And I already mentioned that if there's any failure, that will be indicated by detecting any vapor or liquid that trespass the secondary wall towards the environment, then they would have to fix it. And they would have to test that until they get passing results. Any questions on ELD? Okay, can I summarize it? The ELD test for single wall systems, they have to do it every 3 years. For double wall systems, they only do it once. That's it. It's only for tank. The question was if it's only for the single wall tank or also for UDCs. It's only for the tank. Any other question? Okay, now I ask you guys, when is secondary containment testing required? At installation, 6 months after, and 36 months thereafter. But yeah, it was 2001. Okay, if you are within this distance from a public drinking water well, you will need to implement a program of ELD. 1,000, if you have a single wall system. And I think that's it. Now, Steve Can is going to be telling you about license and certification.